Thank you for joining today. As always, if any of you have questions during the presentation, let me know, unmute yourself, and we can make this a conversation. For those who don't know me, my name is Jorge. I'm part of the security team, and the idea is to have these talks every now and then to discuss certain technologies or certain stuff that might be of interest to you. Today, we're going to check on some technologies that protect us and its weaknesses. Up until the last part, we're going to get a little bit technical, but for all of the rest, everybody uh, should have a good time grasping the concept. And if not, let me know and I can explain it in the moment. Okay, so I have two goals. The first one is that you learn how and when these technologies help you to protect the information, and when they stop working, because it happens a lot that advertisement tells you like, hey, you should take this VPN, this service, because it will protect you everything. Actually, I remember in a podcast hearing a person saying you should have this VPN because it will help you protect all your items in your games and your social media and everything. I was like, that's not how it works, and it's easy to mislead with this type of advertisement. So the idea is for you to understand how they work, so you are not misled by this. We're going to take four subjects basically: authentication and the famous two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication; secure connections, how do we get information from A to B; virus malware, and if you're really protected by antivirus, and a little bit of how it works. And we're going to have a small demo, recorder demo. I did it before, but still, a demo of how to do this. And the last talk, which is about TLS HTTPS, will be a little bit more technical, but in general, it's that little lock in your browser bar. Okay, so first, authentication. It's all about a main problem, just solving a single problem: how to identify something, how can somebody prove that they are the one they say they are. For example, you know me as Jorge. Yes, many of you know me. But how can I give you real proof that I am this person? How do you know that I'm not, I don't know, Alphonse or Edward or whoever? So this is the process of identification. The security process for identifying someone or something. And it has four steps. Three of those steps are mandatory in a sense, and the fourth is really important and it can be forgotten sometimes. The first is identification. And we're going to take an example of a girl named Alice. She's going to try to enter into a building. So she arrives there, and the security guard says, "Hi, who are you?" And she will say, "Hi, I'm Alice. May I enter the building?" Now, this first part is her saying, "This is the identity I claim to be. I am Alice." That's all. Like when you enter to your email account, you claim an identity by saying, "This is my username." That's the whole deal. The next part is authentication. Alice proving she is the person she claims to be. So the security guard might ask for a shared secret, saying, "If you are Alice, answer this. I hate it when..." And she answers correctly. "A chinchilla eats the universe." Perfect. She knows the secret. So by knowing this secret, she proves that she is Alice. So it comes to the third step, authorization. Authorization is about the permissions. Now that we know that who this person is, and we authenticated that she really is the person she claims to be, what can she do with that? And that is about the permissions. The security guard will see his record and it will say, "Alice can only enter floors 1 and 5 in the building." So he will tell you, okay, you can only do this. You may enter floors 1 and 5 only. And that's basically the fourth step is auditing, saving all this information. Because while we took all these steps and we are sure, okay, this person is who they are and they can do this. Eventually, we need all this information in case of issues, in case of compliance, forensic problems, to uncover what went wrong. And that audit could look something like this. Alice entered the building on the 17th of November at this hour. So it is logged. Also, especially if we could have, like, Alice entered the first floor, Alice entered now the fifth floor at this time. So a log would look like that. And also the things that went wrong. Somebody claiming to be Bob was denied entry. So we can also identify things that are going wrong. That's the identification process. But we're talking right now about the authentication part. How do you prove your identity? And this can be quite hard to really solve 100%. So there are three ways that can be solved partially. You can prove your identity by showing that you know something. This is the type 1 authentication, is this something you know. This comes in the form of a password, a PIN, a secret, some sort of private information. If you know that, then it means you are the person. The type 2 authentication is a little bit stronger. It's something you have. This can be also in the form of physical token that gives you some digits, some numbers. That's a one-time password. A software token, like having it in your cell phone, and even some, though they are not secure anymore, but there were also some cardboard, so some cardboard things like this size would have some numbers, so you would have to search for some stuff in there. So if you have that thing, well, you can prove your identity because only you should have it. And then we have type 3 authentication, which is something you are. All of these are the authentication factors, and the something you are is in a form of something you cannot change about yourself, like your fingerprint or your face with facial recognition, even the size of your ear, your eye, retina scanner, and things like that. So these are the three main types of authentication. These are called authentication factors. There are other that are less widely used. You might have seen them. For example, there's another one called something you do. You can see it when a site asks you, gives you a paragraph and tells you, say this out loud. And because of how you modulate your voice and how you say it, it will try to recognize if you're the person. Also, other sites use it with typing a paragraph. So it gives you a paragraph, type it, and because of the way you type it, it will know if you're the person or not. And a less widely used is the somewhere you are. If you're in a certain place, then you should be only that person. That's a weaker authentication factor, but still you can find it in some places. Using two or more of these factors is what is called multi-factor authentication. Simple as that. You use two-factor authentication, more multi-factor authentication. And that's the whole deal about it. Now, a big word of caution about this. Using a PIN and a password. Using the camera for facial recognition and your fingerprint. Or using an SMS and a token in the form of a one-time password. Each of these examples is not two-factor authentication because they are in the same realm. The idea about the factors of authentication is how hard it is for an attacker to get that information from you. If you have a PIN and a password, if an attacker can steal your password, shouldn't be that hard to also get your PIN. If they can steal your cell phone and get access to it, shouldn't be that hard to also steal your token. So that's why having two authentications of the same category doesn't add security. For it to be two-factor or multi-factor, it has to be from different categories. So that's how it basically is. That's the authentication, the how to identify something, the security process. Identification, a person shows an identity. Authentication, the person proves that they are this identity. Authorization, they get the permissions because of this identity. And auditing, all the information of what they've done is stored in a log securely for future reference. Weaknesses. There are many weaknesses with authentication, but in general, when you're using multi-factor, losing one of the factors is one of the biggest risks. Why? Because you have to provide another way to the user to log in. And some sites use a side authentication channel, for example. If you've seen those sites where you tell them, oh, I forgot my password and I don't have my token. Well, answer these questions. What is your mother's maiden name? What was your first school? What's the name of your pet? Those are kind of a password. They are a secret that you should know. And if you know it, then you can claim the identity. However, you have the normal path where you're using two factors of authentication and a weaker path, which is the recovery that only uses one, and it's things that are not necessarily a secret. So if you lose one of the factors, adding weaker recovery options is one of the biggest problems around this. That's why a lot of sites just bootstrap on, for example, your email and say, we'll send it to your email. If you can authenticate you to your email, then you're the person you claim to be. What happens if what you lost was access to that, your email account, so you can get locked out of your account? So this is the basic weaknesses of using this type of schemes. If you lose one of the factors, which will happen eventually, how do you get access again? Do you use a weaker recovery option, or do you bootstrap another service which could or could not be useful? Up until now, questions? I cannot see the chat, so I won't hear it, so you can unmute. If not,
I've got one.
Yes.
You mentioned before about storing audit logs. For example, Bob failed to log in. In practice, how do you balance that against storing personal user information and being GDPR compliant?
That's an interesting question. You can do it several ways. If you have to comply, I'm not that into depth familiar with GDPR, but it protects personal identifiable information. But how much of that information becomes that, for example, if you only have the username, if that's already a problem, then what you can use is pseudonymization, where you add a pseudonym, use a pseudonym for the user. So instead of saying Bob entered, you say user 1003 try to enter. So you can have like a certain correlation of who entered and a dictionary where it says this user has this ID. I wouldn't say that could become a log of that kind could be a problem. But if it is, the other option is use anonymization, but you lose all the benefits of using a log because it will tell you, well, this user with this unique ID entered and then it left and stole something, and you will never know who it was. But that's an interesting question.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Somebody else? All right. I'll continue with secure connections, getting information from A to B. Let's just talk about the journey of a package. Let's say you want to visit your favorite websites, you want to send information somewhere. In a really big simplification of how it works, basically will go this way. First, you will send it through your computer to your internet service provider, your ISP. Whoever you pay the internet to, that's your ISP. Then the ISP will send it to certain intermediates. All the people who control the connections inside the internet will just simplify it and call them intermediaries. So it will send it to this person, that person. It will take a path until it reaches the website. Now, what's the deal here? Before, if the information is not encrypted, is not secure, everybody can see all the information and everybody can take a look at it. Now, with encryption, which is the web standard right now, we won't bother about that. But there's still information that these people can know, the ISP and the intermediaries. As a secondary thing, you also need a DNS. The DNS will be like this big phone book, which will match, for example, you say, oh, I want to go to duckduckgo.com. So where is it? You send a message to the DNS, hey, where is DuckDuckGo? Here's the address, we'll return, and then you go to that address. So everybody knows from your ISP and your intermediaries will know the source address approximately because the ISP could be using NAT or doesn't matter. Let's say they can know the source address with approximation. And everybody knows the destination address. They know that this person visited this IP address. But the ISP will also know the name of the site, the domain name, because they also sent the DNS request. So they know all this information. So how can you hide some things from them? Some commercial solutions. You can either hide the source or the destination, and for this, a proxy can help you. A proxy will be a computer that will basically receive your messages and send them again with their name as sender. So for all the people in the left, again, your ISP and all the intermediaries, until your proxy, they will know your source, but they will think that the proxy is your only destination. All the traffic that you send away goes to a single destination, and that's all they know. And on the right side, the proxy will also have an ISP, will also have some intermediaries until the website. So the proxy knows everything, so you really have to trust this centerpiece. And the people on the right, they know the destination and think the proxy is the source. So that's how you do it. That's how you hide the source or hide the destination. For the left, you hid the destination. For the right people, you hid the source. Now, the proxy won't ensure you any security or anything. They just tell you, send me your package and I'll send it as if I was the sender. A VPN takes a step further into this. Also the same scheme. You have the ISP intermediaries in both sides, but the VPN solution will create a thing called a tunnel. And to make an analogy out of this, is a really secure way of sending things, because if your packages are already a safe box, you will put it in another safe box and you will send one inside the other to the VPN. After the VPN, the package goes as usual. So, also for the people on the right, they think that the information came from this server, the one that says I'm the VPN. But with this, you protected the half on the left. So basically, when you have a VPN solution, because you don't trust these people, you're just changing your trust in other people, saying, well, if I don't trust this ISP, I trust this other, because somebody has to provide the internet connection. And the main use of commercial VPNs, or why they advertise it a lot, is because, for example, let's imagine you are here, and I hope I got the Netherlands and not Belgium, but let's say you're here. If not, I fail geography. And you want to access this site that is on the US. But it tells you, nope, only people in the US can access this site. Okay, somebody else tells you, this is the VPN. And it will tell you, okay, send me your packages and I'll send them as if they came from me. So you connect to them, and then the VPN connects to the server that you want to get your messages to. So for that server, it will think that all the communication is with a US computer, so they are fine. This is geofencing, the idea of only allowing certain people to enter because of where they are. You use VPN to overcome this. Now, the thing is, for a VPN, only the dotted connection is secured by the VPN solution. The VPN cannot say anything about this second connection. It goes as usual, as if you had a computer here. So, as this, it makes it look like your traffic originates from here. Now, that's not the original purpose of VPNs. That's how it's sold right now. Like, oh, you want to access this site, view videos, view movies, view whatever, use a VPN, you want it, and protect all your information. Well, it only protects the left side of these diagrams. Now, VPNs normally are used to connect people or connect branches of an organization to the same network. And we use it, for example, here at Worth. You use a VPN and the server is within the network of the company. So whenever you connect to the VPN, for all the resources, it looks like you are inside. And then you can access everything that is within. With this, you have a secure connection from here to here and a closed connection inside here. So it makes it look like you're inside and you can do, well, whatever you can do as if you were there. Also helps connect different branches. For example, the two branches of Word, they are connected via VPN, and this allows for this. Now, some caveats. The VPN provider is still an intermediary, so they know a lot of information about you. So you must think about, whenever you're considering a VPN provider, how much information do they collect? They may say, no, we don't. Are you sure? Where are they located? And how much do you trust them? Those are the main questions when you're considering a commercial VPN solution. After the VPN server, traffic goes as usual, as if you were there, so it's not protected afterwards. And some providers say we have the no log policy, where nothing is saved in our servers. Why is this? In certain countries, it is possible for law enforcement to ask this information from the companies. But if they don't store information about you, they cannot provide information to law enforcement. So that's, in theory, what they sell. How much you can trust that is up to you. Now, there's a third solution called Tor. Tor has three parts, and for simplification, we will skip the ISP and intermediaries. A Tor network will also try to send messages from your computer on the left to a website. But for this, it will use first an entry card, which is a computer that lets you enter your message into the Tor network. That entry card will send it through a random path within the middle relays. The middle relays are a lot of computers that are connected to the Tor network. So a random path is created within that network, so your message goes here, there, and everywhere, until it reaches an exit relay, also selected at random. That exit relay is the one who sends the packages to the website. For all means, the website only knows, oh, this person sent me a package, but no no one knows both the sender and the receiver. That's the whole idea about Tor. So Tor has two purposes. The first purpose is circumvent censorship. In certain countries or in certain places, they will have a blacklist of these are the sites that you cannot access, especially in countries. So the idea of the entry guard is a computer that is not in the blacklist. So you can send all the information to that computer and you're not that they are not in the blacklist, so you can communicate with them. But inside the Tor network, it will go through a random path until eventually reaches the website that was blacklisted. So that's how it circumvents censorship. And the other is for anonymized connection because it's really hard to backtrack through this path. It gives certain anonymity to the subject. So, in case you're a reporter in areas of danger, if you are a spy, if you have a life or death threatening situation, this is really a tool that can help you. Now, it is used also for normal navigation if you're really paranoid about your privacy and stuff. Well, Tor is also a solution, but Tor also is door to the dark web, which has caught a lot of attention. And the dark web works like this. It's a website that is within the middle relay layer. So for you to get into that middle relay, you have to, via Tor, enter a path that gets you there. Now, for you to know or to get into a website that is in this middle relay layer, you have to know the exact address, and these addresses are not indexed by a search engine. You just have to know it, and they are big addresses. You cannot spell them via phone because they have like 30 or more characters. So that's the whole idea. Dark web lives here. But apart from that, all the website is just as usual. And the cool thing about Tor is that anyone can be part of the Tor network. You can say, well, I have a computer, I have a decent internet connection, I want to be an entry guard. You just make it public and Tor will have it in their database. Oh, this person is also an entry guard. You can be a middle relay or you can be an exit relay. The thing with being an exit relay is that everything will look like as it came from you. And if somebody breaks the law using Tor, they will come and try to find you. But Tor has a lot of documentation on saying, oh, if this person comes to you, this is a template of what you can give. If the law enforcement comes to you, this is some legal advice and things like that. So the idea is to make it as open as possible. Now it comes to end-to-end encryption. And that's some terms that usually is used a lot in social media, especially messaging services. Now, the fact is this. Remember, you want to visit a site, a website, so you send a package. Standard HTTPS is already end-to-end encryption. It sends your package from where you are to the website securely. End-to-end encrypted means that if the sender sends a message intended for the recipient, only the recipient can read it. Nobody else, even if they try, nobody else can read it. So that's basically it. But it is promoted in social messaging apps because of this. This communication from you to the messaging server is secured. Maybe they use HTTPS, they use whatever they want, but it is secured. But how about this connection from you to another person? The protocols, like HTTPS, assure you that all the information to the server is secure, but they don't give you anything about how they use it. They could just be recording all the messages. They receive it, they decrypt it, and they encrypt it again and send it to the person you're talking. Nothing tells you that they are not recording that information. So the idea of end-to-end encryption in social media is that protects private information from being collected by this intermediary. So this person being the sender and this person being the receiver, only they two know the contents of the message. But how it is implemented in reality has a really, really big caveat. How can you be sure that this is happening? For this to be sure, one thing has to be true. The sender and the receiver must have a shared secret, a shared password. They both must know something that the company does not know, and that's the password, if you want to call it, that encrypts all the information from sender to receiver. So they must share this secret. But in order to do this, you should be allowed to set the encryption key. Now think about your messaging application. Does it let you set your encryption key when talking with X or Y person? If they don't let you choose it, it means they choose it, and what tells you they are not storing it. So in the end, unless you can set or choose the encryption key, you cannot be 100% sure that it's end-to-end encrypted. And this term makes a lot of sense on peer-to-peer communication. This means person to person, computer to computer. Questions up until now?
Yeah, I had a quick question about 2 slides ago with the setting the encryption key. How does setting the key make it more secure? Because surely if you set the key, they can still, if you're running their application, they can still just send the key to themselves.
Yes, well, that is a good point, because you then would also have to be sure of the source code. And yes, that is a good point. Then that's as much trust as you can give, but that's also a big caveat, and you're right. If you can put it there, nothing stops them from just sending it to themselves. So yes, it's a good point.
Thanks.
If you want a really, really, really secure application for communication, then maybe a better option is having it open sourced. You control the server and you control the keys, but each time you have a step towards free, you take a step back from privacy. Any other question?
I had a question about the Tor thing that you had a few slides ago. Doesn't it trigger that capture stuff on most of the websites if you're using Tor? Like asking you to confirm that you're not a robot, and then it just doesn't allow you to access those sites.
Yes, it can trigger this, and it can also trigger some security features. For example, Azure, I think they detect if somebody is navigating using Tor. This can be done because I'm not quite sure, well, at least the public part, because you can also do a private, having a private entry guard and a private exit relay. I'm going to return to the... You can have a private entry guard and a private exit relay that only you use. And nobody would know that you're using Tor. But, for example, the exit relay list is more or less known. So sites could see and could have a list of this and say, if it comes from this list, they are using Tor. And it can trigger these type of things like CAPTCHAs, or even being banned from sites at all. In Azure, it triggers security flags.
Cool. And there's no other way of kind of getting around that. So.
Well, controlling the exit relay. If you have a private exit relay, you can set the random path within. so that it exits through your exit relay, and you could manage that certain privacy. Actually, I think the certain governments try to get exit relays of their own in the Tor network, so they can have at least certain control of what is happening. And there have been certain attacks to the Tor network where if you control, I think, I don't remember correctly, I'm just going to throw a number, but I think it's 30% of the exit relays, you could start getting information of who is the sender.
If I'm not mistaken, Tor also sets a user agent string. So they just it's very easy to override the user agent string, but by default, if you use the default Tor browser, then they will also nicely tell the whole world that you're using the Tor browser. So that's also a very easy way for companies to see that you're using Tor.
Ah, I didn't know that. So yeah, you're making it public.
Uses Firefox to try and hide you, but of course, you know that like you're either using Firefox or you're on Tor, and at that point, it's quite easy to tell. I think.
Yeah.
True.
Brave,
Though,
there's a Brave browser which allows you to go through Tor. It's like natively built in into that. But,
yeah, the user agent string can be overwritten by any user, so I would suppose you should have some fun, all everyone, and just look up how to do it. There are some things on the internet, and then a lot of people will be looking at Google Analytics and freak out if you put something funny there.
yes, I can bet. Yeah, and that's a good point. The Tor is the protocol, and normally the way that Tor is mostly used is via the Tor browser, which is the Firefox instance that connects to the Tor network. But you could also, if I remember correctly, you can also connect to Tor natively as like the whole computer through the Tor network. Though by default, certain ports are disallowed. Like for example, port 25 for sending outgoing email, it's closed to avoid spam. But you could, in theory, connect natively your computer to the Tor network. So it doesn't matter what browser you're using, all goes through Tor. All right, any more questions? All right, then we'll continue with antivirus. Now, here is the problem with virus. Imagine you have this picture. Somebody shows you this picture and tells you this question. Can you spot the person that is bad? Can you spot the person that is not doing something good, the person that stands out? And with this picture, you can say, well, I have no idea. Also, this is the antivirus problem. They have a ton of files, a ton of processes working in the computer, and they have to say, this process is bad, this process is misbehaving, this file is a known bad file. In computer virus, you have a whole slew of things that can go wrong. And basically, the big name for all this is malware, for malicious software. But you can have, for example, polymorphic virus, which change themselves. Multipartite virus, which they scramble themselves in a lot of harmless parts until they are together. Stealth virus, which try to hide themselves. Encrypted virus, which until they work, they are encrypted so nobody can see how they work. Worms, which move automatically through the network to other computers. Logic worms, they move until a certain logic condition happens. Trojan horses, which tell you, yes, I'm just a simple calculator, but I'm really taking over your computer. Spyware, they spy on you. Adware, they insert advertisement to you, and so on. The list is big. So this is the zoo of computer virus. So the solution is also a big zoo of antivirus solutions. And you can have signature-based antivirus, heuristic-based antivirus, AI-powered antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spyware, and whatnot. But basically, for antivirus, there are two strategies that they can take. The first one is signature-based antivirus. And what they do is whenever they find a file, they check it against a big list of known malware. This is akin like in the movies when people are going through the line to enter their airplane. There's a guy in security who has a lot of photos of the most wanted. Since the photos, it's not in here, you're good, come on in. That's the whole idea of the signature-based antivirus. And with this makes them fast and straightforward. But they have to be updated often. New viruses are created by the thousands every day. And how they calculate how they compare files is by calculating a signature out of these files, which is a hash function. And so a single change on the original virus, a single one, creates a whole different signature. So they have to take into account the virus and all the variations around it. So it goes to another approach, the heuristic based. And it's like akin how police officers know that a person is drunk. They will ask him, okay, try to walk in a straight line. Now touch your nose and I don't know, say the alphabet and stuff like that. They monitor the behavior of a software, or they look through the source code for malicious activity, for known malicious activity, so they can see, hey, you're just a simple text editor. Why are you trying to go to the web and download a whole lot of things? Some of the weaknesses might not work against new vulnerabilities. Attackers are really motivated. So they will get clever. They will get a lot of things that seem unrelated and make it work against these things. Or also another part, they might get false positives. Program that maybe there's a text editor that needs to go to the web and download a whole lot of things, but might be flagged as a virus. And in some cases might require to see the virus working, especially for encrypted virus, because they will go to the source code, it's scrambled, they cannot know what it does until it is executed and it's working. They say, whoa, trying to do a lot of stuff. So antivirus are a good thing. They are not perfect, but they are only effective with good practices. And with good practices, this is the one I want you to have. It's a single cycle, and this is promoted by a lot of security companies, is the stop, think, act cycle. And it seems like, oh yeah, you just stop, think, and act, but it's not that, it doesn't happen that often. For example, if you get an email saying, hey, your package from Amazon is lost, click here to track it. Click, because I was expecting a big thing from Amazon. Those are the flags that whenever something triggers you, gives you that gut feeling something is not right, stop, think, and act. There are a lot of good practices, but if you take this one, you're good to go. Now, there's a myth I want to debunk. There was a big claim a long time ago saying there are no viruses for Mac.
If I remember that, yes.
Yes, and it happened. For example, there was a time that there weren't, or there were too few of them, but with the years it has been expanding. And for example, this is an old diagram. I couldn't find something more recent. But in 2016 and 2017, you could get new viruses by the thousands for Mac exclusively. Now, there are a lot and it's growing. But if you compare it to Windows, Windows goes by the million per year. So yes, there is a ton more viruses for Windows than for Mac. And why is that? Because of the market share. If you're going to take the time to write a malware, well, you might as you might as well make it you might as well make the most out of your investment with that. So take what most people are using. Though, as a side note here, Mac architecture is a little bit safer because they used a closed architecture in comparison with well, PCs, not Windows Computer, but the rest of PCs. They use a more open architecture because they want to let anyone to be part of it, like saying you can use any processor, any motherboard, any RAM, any, and this openness also brings this type of problems. Mac controls a lot of that, so it allows it to be more secure. Now, a big question, how hard it is to create malware? And I'm going to show you here that is not that hard. This is a demo that I did today, and I'm going to show you how a new malware can be created. On the left, you can see a Windows 7 machine. It's a virtual machine. On the right, you can see a Kali Linux machine, which is a Linux distribution for penetration testing. So in here, left Windows machine, I'm going to use a tool called MSF Venom. With this tool, you can, it lets you, like Lego pieces, I want to use this type of exploitation, this type of payload. I want to make it tailored for this computer, and I want it to be created as an executable. And even this, for example, just note this difference here. I created 2 times the same malware or the same executable with this payload. File.x and file2.x, they are exactly the same. But even this software will scramble the information within so they can give different signatures. Now the next question, which is a lot of science in viruses and worms and everything, is how do you get this file to the computer? I did it the easiest way. I just open a web server on the right so I can download the file via that web server here. So here I have the file on the desktop. Now I'm going to use Metasploit framework in order to capture the connection. So this is not important here, just waiting for the connection. I run the file, and for the person using the Windows machine, nothing happened. With MSF Venom, you can even say, well, open a calculator or something. So it looks like something happened, but it's harmless. But here on the right, I already have a connection to the computer. So then, I'm inside the computer and I can do anything. For example, here I run the calc command, and here it appears. It appears behind the Explorer. I can also create a notepad. It's here. Our calculator, and take control of the machine. With the tools right now, this is as easy. Oops. This is how easy you can create new malware. And there are even several tools to make it look like it's not a virus. So even heuristic type of antivirus, even AI powered, won't be able to uncover what's within. Questions up until now? All right. And now the last subject from today is TLS and HTTPS. Beware, a little bit of more technical lingo will come here. But I hope everything is explained. So, in general, TLS, HTTPS, and the modern web is on top of a mathematical marvel called asymmetric cryptography. And how this works is that Whenever you want to send a message, you use two keys. You have a public key and a private key. Whatever you encrypt with the public key can only be decrypted with the private key. It's like having a box. If you close it with one key, you can only open it with the other. And the other way around. That's the whole thing about asymmetric cryptography. The other thing that we need for this is trust chains. For example, here is Alice. And Alice just met Charlie, and she wants to know if she can trust him. But there's nothing about him that can tell her, yes, trust him, or not, do not trust him. But she knows Bertha, and she trusts Bertha. Bertha trusts Charlie and vouches for Charlie, so now Alice can trust Charlie. That's the trust chain, and it can go as deep as possible. It can go very deep. Now, public key infrastructure, how it works. For example, I'm here and I want to go to the worth.systems webpage. When I go there, worth.systems will give me a certificate. With that, I cannot be sure if I'm really at the worth.system website or I'm seeing a phony website. So how can I be sure? There are some companies that apparently we trust. Yeah, like IdenTrust, GoDaddy, DigiCert, GlobalSign, Komodo, Let's Encrypt, and many others. So because I trust them, the industry selected them, and in your browser, it already comes as a default. You trust them. So if you didn't know, you already trust these people. Now, these people can sign certificates and give you this trust chain because these people vouch for another website, then you can trust that website. In the case of worth.systems, it's signed by Let's Encrypt. Because you trust it, you can trust this certificate. Now, this can go in a big chain. For example, these people can sign other intermediate certificates, and with those certificates sign another intermediate, and so on and so on. That's the trust chain, and can go as long as needed. But the first one are not signed by anybody. They are self-signed, it's called, and you just trust them by default. And whenever this happens, because a certificate signed by somebody you trust, well, you have here this lock. Within the certificate, you can find a lot of information. Some of the most important parts are the owner's name, the owner's public key, the issuer's name, who signed, and the issuer's signature. For example, here's the worth.system certificate issued by Let's Encrypt Authority. When does it expire? And a lot of information. And here is the trust chain. Now, certain attacks to this. This one is old but very interesting. This was not related on mathematics or anything on how the HTTPS protocol worked. This was because of a dependency. There is a library called OpenSSL that a lot of people use to implement this type of security. Now, there was a message within that library that it was called the heartbeat. So the heartbeat just was this idea of sending a message. Hey, are you still there? Yes, I'm still there. Hey, are you still there? Yes. And worked like this. The client would send a message, for example here, okay, and tell the server, I'm sending you okay, and it's 2 bytes. The server would return the same message, okay, 2 bytes. But what wasn't verified was the size of the payload. So you could say, hey, I'm sending you okay, but it's a really big phrase. So the server would return okay and whatever was in memory at that time. With this attack, you could get private keys, passwords, or everything if it was in memory at that moment. Now the problem is that this left no logs whatsoever. So there is no proof that it was used, but it is suspected that it was abused a lot. Now, another attack, man in the middle. The idea here is, for example, we have Alphonse and we have here Bart who want to talk. Because they are not sure about each other, they haven't met, a third person can connect, and for this person in the left, Alphonse, he can pretend to be Bart, and for Bart, he can pretend to be Alphonse. So he's in the center sending the messages as an intermediary that nobody knows about. That's the basic idea of man in the middle. With man in the middle, as certificate trust chain and trusting a good root trusting good root certificates can avoid this problem, because there is no way for a person that is in this type of attack, a man in the middle, to forge a certificate, a trust certificate. Another attack is the protocol downgrade. The first of its kind was called padding Oracle on downgraded legacy encryption, or PUDL. And you will see that a lot of vulnerabilities, some have really clever names like crime, sweet 16, high, time, and whatever. Media can get really, really creative. But the idea out of this attack is for somebody that it was as a man in the middle, an attacker, to say, and maybe a little bit of history. For HTTPS, there were several protocols. We started with SSL, then SSL was vulnerable, then it migrated to TLS, just another technology, and new versions 1.0, 1.1, 1.2. Currently, the most secure is 1.2, and I think 1.3 is in the horizon, but somebody can tell me that I'm wrong. Now, the idea here is because it was in this transition, protocols could negotiate this and say, and so let the server choose which protocol they could communicate with. So a person in the middle could respond for the server for this first part and say, hey, do you support this? No. Support this? No. No. Until they could force the communication to use a vulnerable protocol. So then that vulnerable protocol, they could de-encrypt it. And then two final things about HTTPS. Maybe if you're developing, you've seen, you have to have the HSTS header. Why does it help? What's the whole deal about HSTS? Now, let's imagine this. A person visits and you have a site which uses HTTPS, but for some reason a person visits it with HTTP protocol without the S, so it's not encrypted. This can happen because he had it bookmarked like that. There's a link within the site that the administrator forgot to update to HTTPS, or is used to click whenever the certificate not trusted message appears. He's used to say, yeah, ignore, accept. So in order to and this, you would expect that if somebody goes with HTTP to your site, they are redirected to the HTTPS. But during this window, there's a possibility that an attacker redirects them to another site that they control. And with this window, also compromise the client. So to avoid this, the idea is to use HSTS. And what this tells is to the browser, after this time, whenever you connect to my site, doesn't matter if it's via an HTTP bookmark, an HTTP link, always use HTTPS. Don't even try with the unsecure protocol. For 3 months, for 1 year. And that 3 months, that 1 year can get a little bit tricky, because if you want to make changes, everybody that contacted your or visited your site for the first time will continue with the old information. So that cache you really have to take into account. But that's the whole idea. HSTS tells the browser, no matter what, always use HTTPS to connect to me. And finally, certificate pinning. Remember, we always trust a certificate that comes from these people. So let's say we have Google, and Google, I don't know who they use. I think they use their own certificate authority. But let's imagine one of these created their certificate, so everybody can connect to Google. But what happens if one of these companies, for one of these companies, a government agency or organization asks them to issue another certificate for a site? So two certificates exist for a site. The second one is controlled by the government organization. And with this, because they have access to this certificate, they can fool other people into going through the site using this certificate and having an invisible, non-traceable man-in-the-middle attack. So to avoid this, you put a certificate in the client. Normally, certificate pinning, you see it a lot in mobile applications that say, don't even trust a certificate that is signed. Trust only this single certificate. And that's the whole idea about pinning. Doesn't matter if somebody signed it, doesn't matter if it's not signed, you only trust this single one. And that's the whole thing about certificate pinning. We're out of time, so I'm sorry if I took more minutes out of you. For this part, I had to go a little bit faster. But does any of you have any questions?
I think the certificate bit was quite interesting because I've had a few problems in the past with my own websites, and which I've done myself personally, not for business, obviously, but and certificates is one of those things that I've not fully understood, particularly when it's HTTPS and the difference between that and HTTP. So that's where I fall down, I think. I'll probably chase you up and ask you some information on that, maybe via email or something. Yeah.
No, of course. Yeah, we are, as the security team, we're always open to that. So also, if any of you want to say, hey, we want to know more about this technology, we want to know more about this, we can organize workshops for you so you can go a little bit more in depth to that, or at least we can research on how it works so you can grasp it better. So that's actually one of the services that we provide. So I'm glad it helps. And yes, feel free to contact me. And yes.
Thanks.
I have a question.
Sure.
About HSTS, how do you feel about the preload list? Should that be used more, or because let me just explain for everyone else. There's like a list. You can there's an online form, and this online form is maintained by Google. And the problem with HSTS is you still need to have a first connection before the header is set, and that first connection needs to be, if I'm remembering correctly, that already needs to be secure. And from that moment on, the header is set, and everything will go through HTTPS. But it's still like a chicken and the egg problem. You're solving it a little bit, but it's still like possible. So there's a list that you can subscribe to, or you can fill in your website for the preload list, and it will actually bake the HSTS header inside of the browsers, because I think every browser uses that. But the downside of that is that you don't have any control. If you ever want to do anything HTTP, then and you want to use anything HTTP, you have to send an email to Google, to Mozilla, and beg them to please update the list, and because you don't want to have this header anymore. So is that something we should think about, or is it something we have to be careful with? What do you think?
Yeah, that is a good point. I think it depends a lot on the type of server and the type of users that are using your service. Because yeah, as you mentioned, you still have the first time that the person connects. That first time that they do connect is a window of attack. So you want to close that gap and say there's no window, there's no way a person can be attacked. So why would an attacker try to get to your users and expend a lot of money in order to get to that window? So that's basically the question. If you're really, really worried because I don't know if you're a bank and all the information that goes to you is about payment and whatnot, maybe you're a little bit more interested that this happens. But if you're in an information website, maybe it's not that important. Though, unless you're a governmental entity, you might want to say, well, whatever we say, people take it as true. So we want to be really sure that nobody gets a different message. So the toughest answer to give is, well, it depends. But a threat model can give you insight into that. How far do you have to go?
That's a clear answer. Thank you.
Nice. I'm glad. Thank you. Somebody else? Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I recorded it, I hope. And maybe we're going to be uploading it to YouTube. So, as always, happy to be secure. Nobody said that security cannot be fun. So I'm glad you attended. And you can always continue the conversation with us. As I told you, we're always open to help you however we can. So contact us, let us know, shout at us, send smoke signals. I know we're here, happy to help. Thank you, everybody, and have an awesome evening. Take care.
Thank you. That was awesome. Cheers.
Thank you, Jorge.
Thanks, Jorge.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.